Don in London, hello. It's January 23rd, 2010, and I was just laughing at myself. I couldn't even get the date right when I started trying to do a video. I was back in 2009. Anyway, my videos are all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, and my addictive substance was alcohol. My behaviour just as addictive over the years: work, relationships, collecting, materialism, trying to look right, trying to be right, a very trying person sometimes, because I was always striving for perfection. And whenever anybody asked me to do something or asked me to be involved, I was there because I kept saying yes. And it probably got me into all sorts of scrapes along the way, but it did actually make me strive very hard and work very hard. And I did manage to do 2 careers fairly successfully before I fell off my perch. And what happened? Well, I just got exhausted by trying to be whatever people thought I ought to be, and what I thought I ought to be. I strived and strived and strived, and inside there was still a hole in the soul, as it's called. And in there was most likely fear. But it took me a long time to understand what fear was. It had always been there, but I didn't really have a name for it, other than the imagined fear of people knowing me too well. So I guess, along the way, fear of intimacy in terms of emotional and physical. But of course drink got me out of that fairly quickly. It made me able to be convivial, joyful, behave, I suppose, as I thought I ought to behave, to be able to be intimate in some sort of way. But the next day or the next week or the next month, there was always a fear of not being good enough. So what do? We keep on going with drink, relationships, work, until we can't find out who we are, or we never really get to understand what's inside us and what that gap is for. And it's not to be filled with things which are superficial and indifferent, which is where I got stuck, because deep down there was a very wounded person, not really sure whether there was any point in being on the planet at all. I thought if I looked right I'd be okay, but it turned out that it wasn't good enough to be superficial and indifferent. And these days I take the words of my father on his deathbed. He didn't say, "Son, I've got some advice for you." He said, "This is the way I treated your mother, and it wasn't very good." He said, "I didn't cherish her enough, and I was superficial and indifferent to life and myself, which meant I could be no other way with other people." And yet he loved us all, and we loved him, even though he was a scoundrel, a rogue, and a bit of a reprobate. He had a very lonely life because he was stuck in the malady of alcohol all his life. So we learn, and it took me a few years after that. The devastation of a loss of a parent is bad enough, and to be drinking on top and not really understand what grief is, and that grief continues because it's a part of life once it's happened to us, and it can deepen us and enable us to find how to cherish people and how to love them. But drink got in the way for a good few years after, and it took me a while to understand, having broken down completely and being in an anxiety state for 2 years, what life was about. It wasn't about drinking, and it took me a long time to get there. So what helped me along the way? It was family, friends, community, professionals who played their part in keeping me alive long enough to get a moment of clarity. And I don't know how many rock bottoms I had along the way, but there were quite a few, and I won't go into that now. But that moment of clarity was, I cannot get out of this on my own. All the self-will, all the stiff upper lip, putting on a brave face, all the soldiering on as we do, covering up what's inside, because there's nothing there, or rather unused feelings, suppressed feelings, and a person still yet to be born in a strange sort of way. So reborn again, maybe. Sounds a bit too dramatic, but it's probably true. And what helped me keep into recovery? Well, I got to a fellowship called AA. I was a very poor student. I didn't take on board the ideas straight away. I was cynical, intellectual, and thinking my way through what I thought my recovery could be. And that was said last night at a meeting, thinking my recovery run on self-will, run riot, because I still thought I was running the show. I was the puppet master behind the puppet, and I was the puppet. So fellowship keeps me on track, one day at a time. That's Alcoholics Anonymous, full of unique, authentic people. Not special or different, just unique and authentic, like the rest of humanity. On the road of happy destiny, or trudging on a road with potholes in it too. So what about AA? How does it help me? Well, I share the statement of intent here, or the AA preamble shared at every meeting I go to, and it reads like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And we do that by sharing our experience, strength and hope with each other. And I do it here on YouTube and Facebook and other places, because I was asked to, and for people who can't get to meetings, and just generally helps me settle myself down into a day. And you know, the gift is, in recovery, we have to grieve the person we were, and we have to grieve the loss of our best friend often, which is the drug of choice, alcohol for me, or behaviour, work, relationships. Stop being indifferent and superficial, and try and find out what the depth of cherishing is all about. So that's a journey, and it starts with step 1, which is January for me, all about being powerless over alcohol, and life is unmanageable when drinking. And I prefer not to drink on a daily basis. So I've strung a few days together. And the gift is, as we come out of grief in the anger, frustration and depression side, we get new opportunities. And that grieving process it doesn't just go forwards, it goes backwards, because we do remember and we do realise just how much damage we've done to ourselves and probably the people around us. So there is work to be done in that area, of acknowledging all that. But step 1 is where it starts, and that's what January is all about in the literature in this book, Daily Reflections. And for January 23rd, January being all about step 1, having fun yet? We aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. Or we absolutely insist on acknowledging when it's sad as well. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders, because it's very easy to deflect. The world's going to pot. Or it went to pot and then came into recovery, hopefully. When my own house is in order, I find the different parts of my life are more manageable. Stripped from the guilt and remorse that cloaked my drinking years, I am free to assume my proper role in the universe. But this condition requires maintenance. I should stop and ask myself, am I having fun yet? If I find answering that question difficult or painful, perhaps I am taking myself too seriously and finding it difficult to admit that I've strayed from my practice of working the program to keep my house in order. I think the pain I experience is one way my higher power has to get my attention, coaxing me to take stock of my performance. The slight time and effort it takes to work the program, a spot check inventory on a daily basis, for example, or the making of amends, whatever is appropriate, are well worth the effort. And the gift really is clean living, being open, honest and willing to change my attitude and behaviour on a daily basis, and admitting when I'm wrong, because in vulnerability and admission is the room for growth. And that serenity prayer to acceptance always helps me. So when I say to God or good conscience, depending on how I'm feeling, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is, for me, always just for today.